I get hate. Well, I get all that, yeah. It comes with it. But I could do nothing and get hated on. I could wake up and get hated on. I was born into hate, so it's like.
There is something seriously wrong in Cleveland, and nobody in that building wants to say it out loud. Day 2 of Brown's training camp just wrapped, and while the highlights look clean and the footage looks promising, what's actually happening beneath the surface of this quarterback situation is something the organization is desperately trying to keep quiet. 2 quarterbacks are on that field right now, both talented, both fighting for the same job, and the people in charge still haven't told anyone which one is actually their guy. Not officially, not publicly, not even close. That silence, that's not a coaching strategy. That's not patience. That's an organization that is genuinely trapped between a bad decision they already made and a future they're not brave enough to commit to yet.
Before going further, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing you the content you love. Share this video with your friends so they don't miss out on all the drama and excitement.
Feel like you're in extra good shape?
Yeah, well, what I say is I study my feelings this whole off season, so I know what makes me feel good and what doesn't make me feel good. I'm so serious.
Before we go any further, drop a comment right now, Watson or Shedeur. Just those 2 names. I want to see where this community actually stands because the answer you give is probably smarter than what the Browns front office has figured out. Seriously, go drop it right now, because by the end of this video, you're going to have a very different understanding of why this decision is so much bigger than just a training camp competition. This is about organizational identity. This is about a franchise at a genuine crossroads. And what's being said behind closed doors is completely different from the polished content you're seeing on social media. Stay with me, because we're about to break all of it down. Let's set the scene properly, because context matters here more than people realize. The 2026 NFL season is approaching, and every set of eyes in the league is pointed at Cleveland. Not because anyone expects the Browns to dominate. Not because they're a Super Bowl contender, but because the story unfolding between these 2 quarterbacks is one of the most compelling and complicated narratives in the entire NFL right now. You've got Shedeur Sanders on one side, the college star, the son of Deshaun Sanders, the guy who walked into the league with his name already known before he threw a single professional pass. He came in with momentum, recognition, and the kind of built-in audience that most rookies spend years trying to build. Then you've got Deshaun Watson on the other side, a quarterback who arrived in Cleveland with a contract so massive it made the entire league flinch, carrying baggage so heavy it split the fan base before he ever played a meaningful snap in a Browns uniform. Injuries piled up, performance dropped off. The expectations that came with that contract never materialized on the field. And now here he is, still in that facility, still competing for a starting job, still wearing Cleveland orange. These 2 couldn't be more different in their journeys to this moment. And yet here they are, sharing a practice field, competing for the same position, in what the organization is publicly calling a quarterback battle. Here's the thing though, the energy between them isn't toxic, and that actually matters. Last year, when Derek Carr and Dillon Gabriel were competing for a starting role, the tension was palpable. There were subtle jabs, uncomfortable moments, the kind of locker room friction that bleeds into every part of a team's chemistry. What's being described with Shedeur and Watson is legitimately different. Genuine competition, mutual respect, both guys getting their reps without the drama bleeding into everything else around them. On the surface, that sounds great. Iron sharpening iron, healthy competition, all the motivational language you'd expect from a training camp press release. But here's the part that has people actually concerned. When 2 quarterbacks can coexist that comfortably, when there's no visible urgency, no tension pushing the organization toward clarity, it creates the perfect cover for a front office that doesn't want to make a real decision yet. And that's exactly what's happening right now. The Browns are quietly, deliberately, and very strategically avoiding the one thing they absolutely need to do. Name their quarterback. Commit to a direction. tell the world who their guy is. Instead, they're doing what organizations do when they're not ready to face the music. They're managing the narrative, buying time, and hoping the preseason reveals something that makes the choice feel obvious. But the choice isn't going to feel obvious, because both of these quarterbacks have real arguments for why they should be under center. And the longer the Browns avoid making that call, the louder the questions around this organization are going to get. The friendly competition is a smokescreen, and underneath it, there's a much bigger story brewing. Pay attention to what's not being said, because in the NFL, silence from a head coach is never accidental. Todd Monken has not stepped in front of a camera and declared who his starting quarterback is. Not once. Not a hint, not a lean, not a casual comment that suggests he has a preference. Complete radio silence on the most important position in professional football. And we are not in the early days of off-season workouts here. We are in training camp. We are weeks away from preseason games that will actually count for something in terms of evaluation. The timeline is closing in, and the head coach still won't say a word.
Before going further, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing you the content you love. Share this video with your friends so they don't miss out on all the drama and excitement.
In the NFL, when a coach refuses to talk about his starting quarterback, there are really only a few explanations. Either he genuinely doesn't know yet, which given the timeline seems almost impossible for someone with Monken's experience, or he knows exactly who the starter is, and he's managing the announcement carefully to protect the narrative. Or he's caught between competing pressures from above, organizational voices that don't all agree on the right answer, and he's waiting for consensus before he commits publicly. Any of those three options tells you something concerning about where this franchise is right now. Because a team with real clarity, a team that knows its quarterback situation, a team with a coherent vision for its future doesn't need this much silence. They don't need to protect a decision through strategic non-disclosure. If Watson is clearly the guy, say it. If Shedeur has earned it, say it. The fact that neither of those sentences has been spoken publicly is itself the story. The working theory circulating in media circles is that the announcement is being held until right before preseason games begin. That's the forcing function. You can have an undefined quarterback situation during training camp practices because the stakes are controlled. Nobody's hitting full speed. Defenses aren't bringing real pressure. The margin for evaluation is softer and more forgiving. But the moment preseason games start, you need an answer. Players need to know who they're supporting. Receivers need to know whose timing they're syncing up with. The offensive line needs to know who they're protecting as their guy. Ambiguity in a controlled practice setting is manageable. Ambiguity on a live football field is a disaster. So Monken is running out of time. That announcement window is closing. And here's the thing about delayed announcements in the NFL. They never feel as controlled as the person making them thinks they will. By the time Monken finally says something officially, the media has already been running the story for weeks. The fans have already picked their sides. The locker room has already started forming its own opinions. The announcement doesn't create the narrative. It just confirms what everyone already suspects. The most likely scenario being reported is that Watson gets the first reps with the starting unit. That's the expected, conservative move. Veteran gets priority until proven otherwise. And there's a business logic to it that makes sense on the surface. You've invested heavily in Watson, both financially and in terms of draft capital already spent. Giving him every opportunity to succeed validates that investment and protects the front office from the accusation that they gave up on him too quickly. But here's where that logic starts breaking down. Watson isn't just a veteran who needs time to get going. He's a quarterback who has underperformed consistently, dealt with significant injury issues, and watched his offensive line strain itself trying to compensate for his limitations. Meanwhile, Shedeur closed out the previous season as the starter. He's got real momentum. He's got confidence. He walked into this training camp as someone who's already proven he can take NFL snaps in real game situations. Giving the veteran automatic priority in this specific situation isn't patience, it's avoidance, and Monken knows that, which is probably why he won't talk about it. The preseason game is going to be the first real moment of truth. Whatever has been decided in those coaching meetings, whatever conversations have happened between Monken and the front office, it all becomes visible the moment those first preseason snaps are taken. Because you can control a training camp narrative. You cannot control a live game. And that's when Cleveland's quarterback situation stops being a thought experiment and starts being an observable reality. Everything after this gets more complicated. Because the organization isn't just staying quiet, it's actively putting out a counter-narrative through every platform it controls. What an organization chooses to show you is just as important as what it chooses to say. The Browns' social media presence, particularly their X account, has been in full overdrive since training camp opened. Constant footage drops, highlight clips, practice content, all of it designed to create positive momentum and control the public perception of what's happening in that facility. And if you pay close attention to the content they're actually releasing, a very specific pattern starts to emerge. A lot of Shedeur. Throwing to receivers, connecting on timing routes, moving through progressions in the pocket, looking accurate, comfortable, and sharp. The volume of Shedeur content being pushed out relative to Watson content is noticeable, and that's not a coincidence. In 2026, professional sports organizations treat their social media strategy with the same intentionality that political campaigns treat their messaging. Every clip that gets released is a choice. Every angle that gets featured is a decision. Every player that gets highlighted is a statement. So what statement is Cleveland making by pushing so much Shedeur footage? On one level, they're feeding the audience what it wants. Shedeur has built-in appeal. His name generates clicks. His story generates engagement. From a pure content performance standpoint, Shedeur footage outperforms Watson footage, and the analytics team running that account knows it. But there's something deeper happening here. By consistently releasing footage that shows Shedeur looking good, the organization is quietly building a parallel narrative. One that runs alongside the official Watson gets first rep story. They're creating an escape route. Think about what that looks like if Watson struggles in preseason. The organization has weeks of footage showing Shedeur looking sharp, connecting with receivers, operating the offense with confidence. They don't have to explain a sudden shift in their thinking because they've already been showing everyone that Shedeur is ready. The groundwork has been laid. The pivot feels natural instead of desperate. That's actually pretty sophisticated from a public relations standpoint. It's organizational hedging executed through content strategy. They're not committing so hard to Watson that they're trapped if he underperforms. They're not declaring Shedeur the future so early that they look impulsive if Watson has a strong preseason. They're keeping every option open by feeding both narratives simultaneously through strategic content releases. But there's a contradiction living at the heart of this approach that's hard to ignore. When you're sending mixed signals through content, you're not just confusing fans and media. You're confusing your own players. Receivers don't know whose timing they should be prioritizing in their route preparation. The offensive line doesn't know whose tendencies they're building their communication around. Position coaches don't know how to frame their unit's development when the identity of the guy they're developing for is still unclear. Clarity is not just a media relations concept. It's an operational requirement for a functional NFL offense. The mixed signals being sent through content strategy filter down into the facility in ways that are harder to see but very real in their impact. Players pay attention to what's being celebrated. They pay attention to who's getting featured, who's being built up, and who the organization is quietly positioning as its future. When the answer to that question is deliberately blurred, it creates uncertainty that affects how people show up every single day. There's also the Spencer Fano subplot that deserves a mention here. The Browns' draft pick is getting featured in the content mix too, a young quarterback getting his reps, looking solid, generating some positive buzz. On the surface, that's just good content about a promising young player, but in context, it's also another layer of the mixed messaging. It's the organization saying, look at all the positive things happening here. Look at all the talent we're developing, while quietly hoping nobody focuses too hard on the fact that the most important position on the field is still officially undecided. The content strategy is sophisticated, it's calculated, and it's telling you more about what the Browns actually think than any press conference statement ever would. Because what you choose to show, when you choose to show it, and how much of it you push out into the world reflects exactly where your priorities are. And right now, the Browns' content priorities are clearly pointed toward a future that has Shedeur at the center of it, even if the official story hasn't caught up to that reality yet. What hasn't been possible to contain through content drops and coaching silence, though, is the growing pressure from outside the organization. And one voice in particular just blew the entire thing wide open. Frank Schwab from Yahoo Sports decided he was done being diplomatic about it. This isn't some random sports blogger firing off a hot take for engagement. Schwab is a credible, respected NFL analyst who gets paid to watch football and evaluate what he sees. And what he said publicly about Deshaun Watson and the Browns' quarterback situation has been making rounds in every media circle that covers the NFL because it's not just strong, it's surgical. He didn't just criticize Watson's performance. He dismantled the entire logic behind giving Watson another opportunity. His core argument is blunt and direct. Watson stinks. Not Watson has struggled recently. Not Watson needs to find his rhythm. Stinks. Past tense, present tense, foreseeable future tense. The assessment isn't about potential or what Watson used to be. It's about what he actually is right now as a football player when you watch the tape. And Schwab's position is that when you watch the tape honestly, without the bias of sunk cost and organizational pride, you see a quarterback who is not performing at the level required to justify his starting role. The sunk cost argument is where Schwab gets particularly sharp, and it's worth slowing down on because it's the kind of economic logic that doesn't just apply to football. It applies to every major decision any organization ever makes. The sunk cost fallacy works like this. You've already spent money, draft capital, and years of organizational commitment on Deshaun Watson. That investment is gone. You cannot recover it by continuing to start him. The picks you traded are already wherever they went. The contract money already paid is already paid. None of that changes based on whether Watson starts week 1 or sits on the bench. The decision about who starts your football games should be made entirely on the basis of who gives you the best chance to win right now. Full stop. But what the Browns have been doing, according to Schwab, is allowing the sunk cost to influence the decision. They're essentially saying, we've invested too much to give up on Watson, and that reasoning is not football logic. That's organizational psychology dressed up as strategy. It's the kind of thinking that leads franchises to waste years protecting bad decisions instead of making better ones. Schwab went further. He called it tanking behavior, and that accusation is heavier than it might sound at first. Tanking in professional sports isn't always an explicit, conscious decision to lose games. Sometimes it's a series of choices that effectively remove your organization from competition, even if nobody in the building is willing to say that out loud. Starting a quarterback who isn't performing at a competitive level when a better option is available is one version of tanking behavior. It's choosing something other than the best chance to win, and when you do that consistently, the result looks a lot like an organization that isn't really trying. The most devastating line Schwab delivered was the one about his genuine preference for who should start over Watson. He said he'd rather see Shedeur, Dylan Gabriel, or Talon Green get snaps. He said he'd rather see essentially anyone else on the roster take those reps. That's not hyperbole. That's an analyst saying the performance gap between Watson's current level and what adequate quarterback play looks like. is wide enough that the entire starting lineup approach needs to be reconsidered from the ground up. And when Schwab told the Browns to abandon the dream of Deshaun Watson being their franchise quarterback, he wasn't just making a football argument. He was marking a cultural moment. He was saying that the narrative around Watson in Cleveland has officially expired. The dream is over. The experiment failed. It's time to stop protecting the investment and start making decisions that actually serve the goal of winning football games. What makes Schwab's take particularly impactful is that it didn't come in isolation. This opinion is spreading. It's becoming the consensus position among people who cover the NFL professionally. The shift in media sentiment around Watson and the corresponding rise in support for giving Shedeur a legitimate shot isn't just one analyst's strong take anymore. It's becoming the prevailing view. And when media consensus shifts that dramatically on a quarterback situation, it starts creating the kind of external pressure that front offices can't just ignore. The Browns wanted to manage this story quietly through training camp. They wanted to control the timeline, drip out content, and make the announcement on their terms. Schwab just made that a lot harder. Because now the story is public, the criticism is specific, the logic is undeniable, and every day the Browns don't respond to it with a clear decision makes the silence feel more and more like confirmation. But the media revolt isn't even the most consequential pressure the organization is facing right now. The real stakes of this decision extend far beyond this season, and they center on a young quarterback whose patience is not as unlimited as the Browns might be hoping. Here's the conversation nobody in Cleveland wants to have publicly. What happens to Shedeur Sanders if this organization doesn't give him a real shot? This isn't a hypothetical question designed to generate anxiety. It's a practical football question with real consequences that extend years into the future. Shedeur didn't come into the NFL as a project. He didn't come in as a developmental quarterback, happy to learn the system from the bench and wait his turn indefinitely. He came in with momentum, having just started a full season, with his name already known, with a fan base that believes in him, and with the kind of leverage that most young quarterbacks don't have when they enter the league. That leverage is significant and often underestimated. Most rookie quarterbacks arrive hoping to stick on a roster, hoping to learn from veterans, hoping to eventually earn an opportunity. They're grateful to be there. They're patient because they feel like they have to be. Shedeur's situation is fundamentally different. He has name recognition that generates real media attention. He has fans who are vocally in his corner. He has analysts who are publicly arguing on his behalf. He doesn't need Cleveland to give him credibility. He came in with it. That changes the calculus on patience. The working estimate circulating among people who watch this situation closely is roughly 2 years. 2 years is probably the outer boundary of how long Shedeur is willing to operate in an environment where he feels undervalued and underutilized. 2 training camp cycles. 2 seasons of watching the situation play out. If we're sitting in 2027, and Shedeur still hasn't gotten a genuine, sustained opportunity as the starting quarterback. Not a couple of games because Watson got hurt, but a real commitment. Then things are going to get uncomfortable very quickly. What does uncomfortable look like? It starts subtle. A comment here, an interview there, something that reads between the lines as frustration. The kind of language that makes reporters lean in and ask follow-up questions. Then it escalates. Trade rumors start surfacing. Agents start making calls. Beat reporters start getting tipped off that the relationship between the player and the organization has some tension in it. And then comes the request, the formal request to be moved, the trade demand. The declaration that this situation isn't working. And here's why that matters so much beyond just losing a good quarterback prospect. If Shedeur Sanders requests out of Cleveland, it sends a message to every other talented young player in the NFL about what kind of organization this is. It says this franchise had a young, promising quarterback, and mismanaged the situation so badly that he chose to leave rather than continue fighting for an opportunity there. It says the Browns are an organization where organizational ego and bad past decisions are prioritized over actual talent development. It says Cleveland is a place where stars go to get buried. The LeBron James parallel isn't just a Cleveland sports nostalgia reference. It's a real pattern. LeBron didn't leave because he was ungrateful or disloyal. He left because he evaluated the situation honestly and determined that staying wasn't going to put him in the best position to win. That's the calculation every elite professional athlete makes eventually. And it's the calculation Shedeur will make if the Browns continue on the path they're currently on. The organizational reputation consequences of mishandling Shedeur extend even further than the immediate situation. Free agents evaluate destinations. They talk to each other. They have agents who share information about which organizations are competent and which ones are dysfunctional. If the Browns become known as a franchise that fumbled one of the most compelling young quarterback stories in recent memory, that reputation doesn't disappear when the season ends. It follows the organization into the next draft cycle, the next free agency period, the next set of negotiations. Talented players have options. They gravitate toward organizations they believe in. The Browns need Shedeur to stay optimistic right now. They need him to believe that his time is coming, that the organization sees him as the future, that the Watson situation is temporary. And for the moment, that optimism probably still exists. He's a young professional competing in training camp, believing in himself, believing that if he performs, the opportunity will come. That's a healthy place to be mentally. But that optimism has a shelf life. Every day Watson starts over him chips away at it. Every interview where Monken avoids committing to Shedeur reinforces the quiet message that maybe he's not really the guy. And once that message lands consistently enough times, optimism turns into frustration. Frustration turns into disillusionment. And disillusionment in a talented young quarterback is the beginning of an exit. The Browns have a very narrow window to get this right, and the clock is running. Let's connect some dots here, because when you put all the pieces together, a specific picture starts to form. And it's not a flattering one for the Cleveland front office. The tanking theory has been floating around in NFL circles for a few weeks now, and it's worth unpacking carefully because it's more nuanced than the word itself suggests. Nobody is saying the Browns are sitting in their war room explicitly strategizing about how to lose games. That's not how modern organizational tanking actually works. What's being suggested is something subtler, and in some ways, more troubling. It's the idea that the decisions Cleveland is making, the choices they're prioritizing, the investments they're protecting, the timelines they're operating on, are effectively removing them from genuine competition, even if no one in that building is willing to say that out loud. And when you look at it through that lens, things start to make a lot more sense. Start with the obvious question. If your goal is to compete for playoff football this season, why would you enter training camp without a clear, committed starting quarterback? Why would you still be having a quarterback competition when preseason games are weeks away? Why would your head coach be silent on the most important position question in professional sports? If winning is the priority, none of those things make sense. You'd have clarity. You'd have commitment. You'd have a quarterback who's been installed as the starter with enough time to build chemistry and rhythm before games that matter. The fact that none of that has happened suggests that winning this particular season is not actually the organization's top priority. And if winning isn't the top priority, then what is? The organizational reset theory offers one explanation. Maybe the Browns' front office looked at this roster honestly, evaluated the situation without the bias of public-facing optimism, and concluded that 2026 is not a contention year regardless of who plays quarterback. If you've already accepted internally that you're not competing for a championship this season, then the calculus on every other decision shifts dramatically. Suddenly, the Watson situation isn't about whether he can lead you to the playoffs. It's about what using him this year costs you versus what giving Shedeur extended reps this year teaches you. Suddenly, the preseason isn't about building momentum toward a run. It's about evaluating personnel for future construction. That's not necessarily a cynical or dishonest position for a franchise to take. Rebuilding organizations do this all the time. They identify a season where the realistic ceiling is limited. They use that season as a proving ground, and they come out the other side with more information about what they actually have and what they need to add. It's legitimate long-term planning. But here's the problem with doing it quietly and without communicating it honestly to the fan base. When fans sense that an organization isn't really trying, the effects are immediate and cascading. Ticket sales drop, stadium atmosphere deteriorates, revenue gets impacted. Players in that locker room start asking questions about where their careers are heading. The toxic combination of organizational ambiguity and on-field struggle creates exactly the environment where talented players start thinking about exit strategies. It's the kind of environment that makes free agents choose other destinations when they have options. The sunk cost fallacy comes back into this too. The Browns have spent enormous organizational capital on Deshaun Watson. Picks, money, years of commitment. And there's a very human tendency in any organization to want to see that investment validated before moving on. To want to be able to say, at some point, we gave Watson every opportunity and it just didn't work out, rather than admitting they made a mistake and should have pivoted earlier. That desire to be right retroactively about a bad decision is one of the most destructive forces in organizational decision-making, and it's clearly influencing what's happening in Cleveland right now. The LeBron parallel threads through this too in a way that stings for Cleveland sports fans. LeBron didn't leave because the city didn't deserve him. He left because he evaluated the situation with clear eyes and determined the organization wasn't putting him in the best position to succeed. He needed to be somewhere that was fully committed to winning, not somewhere that was managing narratives and protecting bad decisions. The question hanging over this entire situation is whether Shedeur is going to arrive at the same conclusion LeBron did, not necessarily about the city, but about the organization. Whether he's going to look at what Cleveland is doing and decide he needs to be somewhere that actually believes in him. And here's the darkest version of the tanking theory. Maybe the decision is already made. Maybe the Browns have already internally concluded that Watson is going to struggle, that this year isn't going to be competitive, and that they're going to use this season as extended evaluation time for Shedeur, Gabriel, and the other young options on the roster. Maybe Monken's silence isn't strategic caution. It's the behavior of someone who knows what the outcome of this season is going to look like, and is trying to delay the moment when that becomes everyone else's reality. If that's true, then everything we're watching, the friendly competition, the content drops, the coaching silence, the preseason buildup, is theater. It's performance. It's an organization going through the motions of a quarterback battle they've already decided the outcome of, but can't quite bring themselves to announce honestly. That would be the most uncomfortable truth of all. Not that the Browns don't know what they're doing, but that they know exactly what they're doing and they're just not telling anyone yet. There's a word for what happens when professional organizations consistently prioritize self-protection over honest decision-making: dysfunction. And dysfunction in a professional football franchise doesn't stay contained to the front office. It spreads. Let's talk about what the cost of organizational cowardice actually looks like in practice for a franchise like Cleveland. The first cost is player trust. When players, not just the quarterbacks, but everyone in that locker room, see that their organization is unwilling to make clear, honest decisions and stand behind them, it erodes confidence in leadership. Players need to believe the people running the show know what they're doing. They need to believe the coaching staff has a vision and the front office is executing on it coherently. When the most basic question in football, who is our quarterback, goes unanswered for weeks while everyone dances around it, players notice. And when players stop trusting organizational leadership, effort levels change, engagement changes, and the culture of a team starts to shift in ways that are hard to reverse. The second cost is external perception. The NFL is a league where reputation matters enormously. Organizations that develop a reputation for dysfunction, for protecting bad decisions, for being slow to adapt, for prioritizing organizational pride over competitive results, struggle to attract the kind of free agent talent that turns good rosters into great ones. Why would a top receiver in his prime choose Cleveland over a destination where the quarterback situation is clear and the organizational direction is defined? Why would any high-value free agent look at Cleveland's current situation and think, this is where I want to invest my career? The third cost is fan engagement. Cleveland fans have been through an enormous amount of sports heartbreak. The city's relationship with its professional sports franchises is one of the most emotionally complex in American sports. These are fans who genuinely love their teams and who have been asked to be patient through more rebuilding cycles than any fan base should have to endure. When those fans sense that the organization is not being straight with them, when they smell the disconnect between the official narrative and what's actually happening, the response isn't passive disappointment. It's active disillusionment. Seats don't get filled. Merchandise doesn't get purchased. The stadium atmosphere that makes home games an actual advantage starts to evaporate. The fourth cost, and this is the one that keeps front offices up at night, is opportunity cost. Every week Shedeur Sanders spends as a backup or a competitor in an undefined situation is a week of development time lost. Young quarterbacks develop through game reps, through real pressure, through the kind of experience that only comes from being the guy in live situations. If the Browns spend this entire season giving Watson the bulk of the meaningful snaps while Shedeur watches, they've essentially delayed his development by a full year. In a league where quarterback development windows are finite, and teams are constantly trying to build around their young signal callers, that year of delay has consequences that echo into future seasons. None of these costs are theoretical. They're real, they're measurable, and they're accumulating right now in Cleveland, while the organization decides when and how to communicate the decision it may have already made. The honest version of what good organizational leadership looks like in this situation is straightforward, even if it's not comfortable. You sit Watson down. You tell him the direction has changed. You give him dignity and respect in how that conversation happens. You announce Shedeur as your quarterback going forward. You build your offensive system around him. You surround him with weapons. You commit fully to the identity of a young quarterback leading your franchise into the future. And you live with the short-term criticism that comes from admitting the Watson experiment didn't work out. That's hard. That's uncomfortable. That requires publicly acknowledging that decisions made by people in that building were wrong. But that's also the only version of this story that ends with the Browns building towards something real instead of continuing to drift in the fog of strategic ambiguity. The question is whether the people in that building have the organizational courage to do it. And right now, everything they're doing suggests the answer to that question is not yet. Maybe not this season. Maybe not until the evidence becomes so overwhelming that continuing to avoid it becomes impossible. But the evidence is already mounting, and it's getting harder to look away from. Everything that's been building, the training camp competition, the coaching silence, the media pressure, the content strategy, the organizational drift, all of it converges in the preseason. And the preseason is going to reveal things that weeks of controlled practice footage never could. Here's the fundamental truth about NFL training camp. It's a controlled environment. Defenses aren't bringing their full playbook. Blitzes are limited. Physical contact is regulated. The conditions are designed to let players work through concepts and build chemistry without the full competitive pressure of live game situations. A quarterback can look absolutely elite in training camp and still struggle once the games start counting. Conversely, a quarterback who looks inconsistent in shorts and helmets can find a completely different gear when the intensity of real competition kicks in. Both Watson and Shedeur are going to look good in training camp footage. That's almost guaranteed. Both are talented football players. Both have the physical tools to execute well in a controlled setting. The content the Browns are releasing showing both quarterbacks making plays is real, but it's also incomplete. It's the version of these quarterbacks that exists without the full weight of NFL game pressure on them. The preseason game changes all of that. The moment Watson takes his first snaps in a real preseason situation, every observer, coaching staff, front office, media, fans, is going to be watching with an entirely different intensity than they brought to practice footage. They're going to be watching how he handles pressure, how he responds to a defense running actual game packages, how his decision-making holds up when the consequences are real even if the stakes are still limited. That's the evaluation that matters. That's the one you can't manage through strategic content releases. The likely scenario, based on everything being reported, is that Watson gets the first half or the first couple of series of the opening preseason game. The organization gives him his shot. They demonstrate publicly that they honored the competition. They gave the veteran his opportunity. They didn't just hand the job to the younger player out of impatience. Then Shedeur gets his extended look. The second half, or perhaps a larger portion of the second preseason game, becomes his proving ground. And here's what that structure actually reveals about how the Browns are thinking. If the preseason is designed as a legitimate competition, the coaching staff is going to be evaluating both quarterbacks on equal terms. Performance in those reps will determine the announcement. That's the optimistic version of this story. An organization genuinely committed to putting their best option on the field regardless of prior investment. But if the preseason is designed as window dressing, if the decision is already made, and the preseason reps are just the organizational theater required before making the announcement, then what we're watching is a very expensive and elaborate performance designed to make a predetermined conclusion look earned. That version of the preseason is not about evaluation. It's about optics. The timing of the official starter announcement will tell you which version is real. If Monken announces a starter with 2 or 3 weeks to spare before the regular season opener, with conviction and clarity in how he delivers it, that reads like a genuine conclusion reached through honest evaluation. If the announcement comes in the days immediately before the first game, rushed and surrounded by carefully managed language about continued competition and open doors, that reads like a decision being forced out by circumstances rather than made by intention. Pay close attention to how that announcement sounds when it comes. The language will tell you everything. What cannot be debated is that the preseason ends the period of organizational flexibility. Once the regular season begins, the starter is the starter. The narrative is locked. The team is committed. And whatever consequences flow from that decision, whether it's Watson struggling and the pressure mounting to make a change, or Shedeur watching from the sideline and growing increasingly frustrated, or some combination of both, those consequences become the reality that defines Cleveland's 2026 season. The Browns have been trying to manage this situation like a chess game. Strategic moves, controlled timing, calculated content releases, coaching silence as narrative protection. All of it designed to preserve organizational flexibility as long as possible before the commitment becomes unavoidable. But the preseason is the board being cleared. It's the moment where the game of chess turns into a much simpler, much more direct contest where the only thing that matters is what actually happens on the football field. And whoever comes out of that preseason with the job is going to carry the weight of everything that's been building in Cleveland. The expectations, The criticism, the uncertainty, the organizational dysfunction, the media pressure, the fan frustration. All of it is going to land on one quarterback's shoulders the moment Monken finally says the words out loud. That moment is coming soon, and when it does, it won't just tell us who the Browns' starting quarterback is. It'll tell us whether this organization actually has a future worth believing in. Here's where things actually stand right now in Cleveland. Shedeur Sanders is showing out in training camp. The content is pointing in his direction, and a growing chorus of analysts are publicly saying what many in the league have been thinking privately. The case for giving him a legitimate shot is not just emotional, it's logical, it's supported by performance data, and it's being made by credible voices who cover this league professionally. And yet the organization is still dancing, still silent, still managing narratives with content drops and coaching non-answers, still protecting a decision they've either already made or are too uncertain to make. The sunk cost fallacy has its grip on this franchise. The money spent on Watson, the picks traded, the years committed, none of that comes back regardless of what happens next. The only question that actually matters is what gives the Browns the best chance to win going forward. And that question has a pretty clear answer if you're willing to look at it honestly. The 2-year clock on Shedeur's patience is ticking. The media revolt is already underway. The tanking accusations are out in the open. The fans are watching. The league is watching. Todd Monken is going to have to say something real very soon. And when he does, whatever those words are, they're going to reveal whether the Browns are the kind of organization capable of making hard, honest decisions, or whether they're the kind that protects itself right into another wasted season. The preseason starts and everything changes. Watson either validates the faith or confirms the doubt. Shedeur either gets his real shot or starts counting down the days until he can change his situation. The front office either demonstrates organizational courage or doubles down on the same avoidance strategy that's gotten them to this uncomfortable place. One thing is certain. The comfortable silence that's been holding this situation together cannot last much longer. And the moment it breaks, the Browns' true direction becomes impossible to hide. Drop your prediction in the comments right now. Does Watson get the Week 1 start? Or does Monken finally make the move that changes everything? Because what happens next in Cleveland is going to set the tone for this entire franchise for years to come. And I want to know where you stand before it happens.